Away we go. All right, so welcome to the first PD session in our Flash PD. My name is Sarah Evanson-Atkinson, and I am I am the Professional Development Director for your SCAMLE. So I come to you tonight. First of all, I want to say thank you to SCAMLE for their support of these ongoing professional development sessions. And you all are hardcore. It is 6 o'clock at night. Well, I'm going to have you out of here by 7. But these Flash PD sessions are meant to be sort of make and take, and they're meant to be a little less formal. Hopefully very appropriately teacher-centered, that's our hope, so that you can sort of get some tips and move forward tomorrow a little bit better than you were today. So that's sort of the intention. So a few just simple items just to take care of before we get started tonight. At the end of this session, I will be giving you a code that you can go ahead and give me your email address, and later on tonight you will get a certificate of attendance. So if you do that 5 times in September, that's 5 hours of professional development credit that you could turn in to your school district. And if recertification credit is an issue, we're happy to help with that issue. All right. So again, thank you to SCAMLE for hosting these 5 sessions during the month of September, which we are calling Flash PD. All right, so today's session, we'll go ahead and get started. Today's session is titled 20 Tips for Creating Simple and Sustainable EdVids. All right, so educational videos, try to be hip there. So basically what I've done is I went and I got a hold of a book, which we're going to talk about in a minute, and the book is titled 99 Tips for Creating Sustainable and Simple Educational Videos. And I got a hold of it this summer and I started really studying it, and I was able to take from it 20 of what I thought was really applicable to our work at the middle level. So the learning target for this session tonight is this: whether I'm new to teaching or just new to teaching online, I can use videos of myself to help my students to feel more connected, engaged, empowered, and educated. So hopefully by the end of this session, you will be able to help your students to feel all 4 of those things: more connected, more engaged, more empowered, and better educated. So our 20 tips tonight are going to focus on the 4 main whys. Why are we taking any time at all to talk about videos? Why is video so important in the hybrid and virtual learning environments that we're moving between? And basically, these are our 4 main whys when we're talking about videoing and having to video ourselves, which, by the way, I realize for some of us is cringeworthy, but I hope by the end of the session, you'll be a little bit more motivated to give it a try, because it's not all that bad. So the first 5 tips are going to talk about why it's so important, why video is so important in the delivery of your content. So it's only going to focus on content in our first 5 tips. The next 5 tips are going to talk about how we can use video to connect, because connection is vital if we're going to keep our students connected into their learning, connected to us, connected to their community, connected to our school. The next area is commitment. And when we're talking about commitment, what we're really talking about is that level of engagement. We want students highly engaged, both with us and with the content. So commitment, how can we use video to build that level of commitment in our students? The last area is collaboration. So why is video so important? Actually, it helps us to create a spirit and a community of collaboration. Now, you should be scratching your head at this one. You should be thinking to yourself, Sarah's crazy, because videos are a one-way conversation. So I think I'm going to prove you otherwise during this session if you're one of those thinkers in that direction. But we can definitely use video to collaborate and to help our students to collaborate with each other, which is frankly what we really want, and what is really difficult to do sometimes, or feels difficult in this hybrid or virtual learning environment. So you can see here on the left-hand side of your screen, there's 99 tips for creating simple and sustainable educational videos. That's the book I got a hold of this summer. And so I reached out to Dr. Costa, so that's the author of this book, Karen Costa, and I want you to meet her. And then we'll talk a little bit about some things that I figured out from the book as we go. Oops, I don't know why it didn't play. Sorry about that. It should. All right, here we go.
Hi everyone, my name is Karen Costa, and if you found this video, you successfully completed your first test in using a QR code, the QR code that was listed in the introduction for 99 tips. So you're going to find those codes throughout the book. Go ahead and just view them with your smartphone camera and they'll take you right to a sample video. While I have your attention, I thought I would share a short introduction. I have a few props. So the first thing I'll share is that I do wear glasses and I love glasses. You'll notice when I put them on, however, that there's a bit of a reflection in the video. So I don't typically wear them in the videos that I create. So another prop, something else I'll share about myself. This is my journal. You'll notice there's stickers on it. I have a daily journal practice. Every morning I write in my journal and I really love that. You notice stickers on the journal. I love stickers. Bright rainbow colors are my absolute favorite. So I have a little bit of a sticker addiction. Some of you might recognize the Om symbol. My husband made this beautiful sign. I am a certified yoga teacher in addition to the work that I do in higher education. So that's just a little bit about me. Thank you for exploring the QR code in the introduction, and I look forward to seeing you again in future videos. Thanks for watching.
All right, so Dr. Costa works in higher education and has been working at the college level for years. Yes, I know she's a certified yoga instructor, and she's actually a really nice lady too to talk to. So her book talks about, as the title would suggest, 99 separate tips for creating simple and sustainable educational videos. So as I worked my way through the book, and I worked my way through the 99 tips that she gave, some of the tips didn't apply to us because we deal with adolescents, right? And so adolescents are different than college students, but not that much. So some of the tips had to be sort of eliminated pretty quickly. And then some of the tips for us as middle-level educators could fall back in on themselves because we could combine the two things together, or three tips together in her book. So she and I talked a lot about, you know, the commonalities between middle-level education and higher education and what that looks like. And we also talked about some of the differences between the two. But we came to a really solid agreement at the end of our conversation, which was this. If we can use video to create the illusion, the feeling that you are nearby to your students, that you are sitting beside them at their kitchen table, that you are walking beside them in their backyard, if we can create that feeling, even if it is only an illusion, what we know is that the level of connection will be deeper and our student achievement will rise significantly. So that is very, very important. Recently, I was in a meeting, and two of the teachers at my own school were planning, and one of them, I was asking what kind of content they were recording for their upcoming e-learning lessons, and one of the teachers looked at me very, very passionately and said, "Sarah, I promised my students that they would be able to see or hear me every single day, whether they were with me or at home." And that's where she put the period, folks. In that moment, it became very clear to me that video is a great way for us to connect to our students. Now, you should be thinking right now, this lady's crazy because I can't possibly record all of my lessons and have, I don't know, a life, be able to sleep. I hear you, I get it. You'll notice that the video you just watched was made on Screencast-O-Matic, which is something, and Dr. Costa likes to use a lot of different services in order to record her videos, and sometimes she just records her videos on her phone too. That can totally work. And we have access, of course, to, you can use Loom, you can use Screencastify, even with the Max, the time maximum. So there are a lot of options for us in terms of recording. But I want you to think about the fact that that video we just watched to meet Dr. Costa was 1.5 minutes long. 1.5 minutes. So it's not always about getting every last morsel of that lesson that you delivered in the classroom. Sometimes it's for other purposes. All right, which takes us to our first area, which is content. All right, so these tips are going to be focused only on content for this section. All right, so tip number 20, Dr. Costa talks at great lengths about giving directions in a video for some reason works better than if you don't give directions at all, or if you give directions in a written form. That's not a waste of time. That's not a waste of your videoing capabilities or the storage capabilities of your Google Drive. Giving directions, reading aloud directions to students will up their achievement and will raise their level of success. So very important that if you take some time to give directions to your students, you could give examples in your directions. You could give non-examples in your directions. You could drop in morsels like, for example, most people are going to have trouble with number 3, but I know you can do it. Now, a common misstep that they made that made number 3 so difficult was they forgot to switch the sign. So now I'm more motivated than ever to listen to your directions videos or narration, as it were, your choice, than I ever was before. And now I'm empowered because I feel like I have a secret moving forward about my learning that maybe my colleague doesn't have. So giving directions on video and allowing them to hear your voice or see your face raises the quality of the product that they're going to put out and can also answer a ton of questions before you even start. But a lot of times we think, gosh, are you kidding me? That's so low level, giving instructions on video, but it's so helpful to our students. If they can read it, hear it, see it, we can raise their level of achievement on any kind of product or project that we are involved in. All right, number 19, take a field trip. Okay, so our schools in South Carolina, for the most part, I believe, at this point are closed to visitors. So normally we might even get people to come in over Zoom, and we could have, a situation where we could have them speaking to our students, absolutely, for sure. But we do have some students who are currently learning at home. Maybe they can't get on when you have the special speaker. But if it's you who's doing the speaking, all the better. Can you take a field trip out to your backyard and talk about how there's a certain kind of tree growing? Absolutely. Can you take a tour of your kitchen just to entertain them for 10 seconds? Sure, why not? So think about how you can take a field trip, connect it to your content, and get the kids thinking. Because some of our students haven't really been out of the house, for months. So that's just another way for them to connect to you. All right, number 18, here we go. Explain a concept. All right, so explain a concept. This is your chance to use content vocabulary without interruption. So take a couple of minutes and fully explain a concept. And and the cool thing about making a video is that you don't have to deal with all of the classroom stuff. You can just talk about the concept or the content that you're trying to teach. So if you're talking about equilateral triangles, all right, then you can just talk about that for 5 minutes. You won't be interrupted. You can talk about what it is that you want to talk about. You could have your face in it or not. There are lots of ways to record video from your computer where your face never appears, if that really bothers you. But it allows you to work through that content vocabulary without interruption. And then if the students have questions, what a great way that they're going to have to mimic you and ask questions using that content vocabulary in an email to you, in a private message to you, etc. And it doesn't matter if you're using Schoology or if you're using Google Classroom. These kinds of basic videos are really great to drop in any of those different kinds of interfaces. All right, so number 17, clarify. Clarify a process or a task. All right, so again, this is one of those instructional kinds of videos where you're going, really, I really have to walk you through how to log into Mathia and then how to get to the interface that you're supposed to be using and the workspace that you're supposed to be working in for this unit. The answer might be yes. Remember that we have parents, grandparents, neighbors, aunts, uncles, cousins, older siblings right now who are trying to manage some of the learning. So where I might be able to come home from work and I know what a Padlet is, or I know what a Flipgrid is, and I know what some of these other tools are, these other caregivers simply may not. The lady at the Y may not be able to assist with what you're asking your students to do at home in a hybrid e-learning environment. So if you can take, again, minute or two, screen share, record on Zoom even, and clarify a process or a task, that can be very helpful and empowering for a student and for their caregiver. So and these again are just like sort of the top 20 tips as we go through here. All right, so number 16, the tip here is tell a story. Your students love to listen to you tell a story. Think about all the times in a classroom where you've told a story and they were enwrapped in what you were talking about. And then you had to reel them back in, right? And get them to your content. And sometimes storytelling can be so effective when we want to build community. It allows you to get to know more about them, to get to know more about you, to deepen that emotional connection they feel toward you. We don't just walk into the classroom and you become their favorite teacher. Most teachers can't do that. Most of people can't do that, right? You build trust, you get to know them. What a great way to use video to tell a quick story. This crazy thing happened to me yesterday and it made me think about what I know about how plants grow. I found this stick of bamboo in my backyard and I wasn't sure where it even came from. And I remembered that, right? And you can go on and tell a story to just basically entertain and deliver your content at the same time. So could you tell a story for a launch? Absolutely. Could you tell a story and then cut to a separate video to teach your content virtually? For sure. Could you tell a story to introduce your content in direct instruction and then hand it over to Bill Nye the Science Guy? I'd say so. But you having that personal touch onto a recorded piece of video and telling a story and sharing a story from you, and I hate to say, I'm going to say this part tongue in cheek, even if it's not true, but it advances the thinking, then we do it. All right, so telling a story can be very, very effective. All right, so the second area that I said we would talk about is how do we use video to build connection? How do we use video to build connection? All right, so these tips are only going to be looking at how do we build connection with students. One of the things that Dr. Costa talks about in her book is that she gets kind of emotional in some of her videos for her students. So if you are doing a read aloud, for example, and you get to an emotional, and I'm doing air quotes right now, but if you get to an especially emotional section of a text, and I know you've read it probably 100 other times, but if you allow that emotion to come through, just like you would in a live teaching scenario, it adds a level of humanity to your videos that the kids really need. You're not a TV star. They don't expect you to be. So we can't act like we're waiting for the laugh track. We have to show our humanity. Do you know how many videos that I have put out to my own faculty and staff that I serve where my child streaks basically in the back of the video? Probably more than I'd like to say. Now, is that unprofessional? I mean, if it was really bad, if she was doing some kind of a striptease, I have a 4-year-old, by the way. All right, so if she maybe was strip teasing, okay, fine, that's not cool, right? Okay, my 4-year-old doesn't strip tease, by the way. Don't tell anybody I said that. Okay. I don't need the nice lady from DSS to come visit me. But like if she's running around in her diaper or, you know, whatever, and her pull-up, and she streaks through the back of the video, that makes me a human. That makes me a mom. The reality is that some of us are recording these videos at home, in the car. We're in our classroom, but it's empty and it feels weird. that adds a certain level of humanity to our videos. All right, so something to think about. It's okay to get emotional and show that side to your students. Now this one, I was not a believer at first, but now I am. So Dr. Costa talks for a while in her book about how she never uses a script. Now take a second and just soak that in, because I did not think about that that was a good idea at the outset of this, not by a long shot. All right, but here's what she says in her book, that in her experience, using a script makes you appear as though you're very sort of, your eyes track on the script. You're not looking at the video camera because you're looking at the script. You are very formal, and it comes across as very mechanical to your students. And so her argument in this is that you should really go forward and not use a script. And she even addresses in her book some of the research that shows that when we put videos out to students that have maybe a blooper, oh my gosh, my phone went off in the middle of my video. That's so embarrassing. Now, a lot of us would hit the stop button and then you would walk away. You'd say, forget it, I'll do this a little bit later. My phone interrupted the video for the 5th time, and so I'm not doing it. But one of her examples in the book, she talks about how her phone goes off. She answers the phone, silences it, if you will, and holds it up and says, gosh, that's such a distraction. I hope when you're working, you're not as distracted by your phone as I am. I'm gonna go ahead and put this away. And she puts the phone down and continues on with her mini lecture. That adds a very unscripted feel to her videos. And she noted the fact that when the students return to her classroom the next day, the next week, she knows that they've watched the video because every single one of them will comment on the fact that her phone went off and interrupted her video. So she knows that they watched the content. So, I mean, I hadn't really thought about it that way, I guess. You know, we want to be perfect. We want to be perfect. We want to be perfectionists. And the reality is that that feels a little too much like TV. So if we go unscripted and we say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and talk about how to figure out the diameter and the radius of circles, because that's what I'm working on in 7th grade math. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to commit to making a 3-minute video. And it's just a how-to on how to figure out the radius and the diameter. You can do that. And so she would argue, and after reading it and working with this a little bit more, I would argue that it's best to go unscripted for something like that. Definitely leave your script behind and just record and screen share and talk to your kiddos who are at home at the kitchen table and who really need you. Number 13 talks about diversity. And basically what she talks about here is that we have to cultivate commonalities between all of us in order to build a learning community. And we can use video in order to do that. So if you're having a bad hair day because it's super humid outside, but you know what, you really have to record a video today because you have some content that has to go out tomorrow, totally okay for you to do your video anyway with your crazy hair that's, you know, it's deeply affected by the humidity. Because at the end of the day, your students are having bad hair days too. And your students don't feel perfect or adequate at all. So if we can show levels of vulnerability, inadequacy, if we can show that humanity and that vulnerability that we have as human beings, as common human beings, then we can establish those deeper trust bonds, and we can really demonstrate what we have in common. And what we have in common, of course, is we're all taking this class together, and we're all in this together, which is can be very empowering and very comforting for our learners who feel very isolated in this environment. So your videos really work to bring students into the fold so that they feel and they're a part of your classroom. So quick story. So right now in Greenville County, we are on a rotating model. Next week we go back to school 2 days a week. And so we see two groups of children. So if you can imagine it this way, it's sort of like half the school on Monday and Wednesday, and the other half of the school attends on Tuesday and Thursday. So the Monday, Wednesday kids and the Tuesday, Thursday kids, they don't mix, their paths don't cross. And so far, for the first 2 weeks of school, we've only seen a quarter of our students each day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And so the Monday students haven't yet met the Wednesday students, and the Tuesday students, you see where I'm going, right? So they haven't yet met their colleagues who are signed up for the same course that they are. They might go through their Google Classroom and they might recognize some names. But beyond that, they haven't met these people in person yet. So we, as teachers, we're very used to building this large learning community very, very quickly. We don't have that luxury right this second. Some of our school districts are operating on that same kind of limited view hybrid model. And so these 2 weeks have been really interesting, and I don't know what next week holds, but it's very interesting to see because we're going to have a series of first days again. And so videos help us to build that level of commonality. All right, so number 12 is I have just some, a picture on there that says be present. So one of the things that Dr. Costa talked about in the book that really spoke to me was that she did an analysis, and she had her students do an analysis because she's been doing this work of doing this sort of virtual teaching for quite a while. And so she had her students in one of the classes basically say, like, I'm going to give you 10 professors, and I want you to look at each one of their presentation styles, content, subject area, you name it. She made a whole list. And she said to them, I want you to rate them. Like, who is the best professor? And then obviously put them in order. And then who's the worst professor? And she said, it's interesting, the data that was produced from that project, because it was not related. The continuum was almost identical between the college students, which I find that just baffling on itself, that they all came to an agreement about something. But the data that was presented that they came to consensus on was that the best professors weren't necessarily the most highly published. They weren't the most academically astute. They didn't have the most years of service in. No, they were present. Those students felt connected to them. They felt like their professor cared about them. They were convinced that that professor knew their name. And they felt like they were a part of that learning community. As a result, it was interesting on the other side of the continuum. If you think about, well, these were the worst, okay, more air quotes, the worst professors. And those worst professors weren't the youngest. They weren't dumb. All right, there was nothing bad about them. It's just that they weren't there. They posted some worksheet type work and some reading assignments to the educational platform that they were using at the college. And that was pretty much it. So the students didn't feel connected to them, and they just basically were convinced that, well, maybe they might be nice people and they may be really great college professors, but they just weren't there. So I couldn't really rate them on how connected I felt or how effective their course was, because I just didn't feel like they were present. So that really got me thinking a lot about what we do in the middle level in this environment, in this virtual environment. Because if you think about it, our adolescents are very concerned with connection. And normally the connection with their peers, their same aged peers, is the most important thing, right? It's the reason that they breathe. That's what we know about adolescence. But we can get in on this, okay? Because if you haven't yet been back to school, we have. But if you haven't yet been back to school, let me tell you, the most amazing thing is going to be how quiet it is in your lunchroom and in your gym. Something about a face covering and a mask makes them go mute. How do you make friends if all you can do is stare at somebody? So we can be present in our videos so that the kids and the students feel like they're connected and they belong to our learning community. So important. All right, number 11 is actually the last part in our connection section. So we call this meet and greet. So this is something that that's really easy to do, and I just never really thought about it before. And we've done a lot of these webinars at this point with SCAMLE. We did a bunch in the spring, and the ones that I don't teach all of the webinars, right? I bring you other talent and other professionals from around our state. But one thing I always do is when I moderate these sessions, I always come in a few minutes before the session starts, usually about 10 or 15 minutes before the session begins, and I'll start calling out people's names, and I'll say welcome, welcome Dr. Durden, so happy you're here, and I'll call out the people who are in the session with me. Now, there's a couple of reasons I do that. Now, I'm not a brat, I promise, and I'm not trying to call anybody out. I'm totally not. But that meeting and greeting your students at the door, think about what we do at our live school, right? We meet them at the door. There's some teachers who have these elaborate handshakes. We go to all these great lengths to make our students feel connected, warm, welcome, all of that stuff. Well, that stuff is off the table. So the question is, how can I meet and greet you in, say, a Google Meet or on a Zoom? Or how can I recreate that experience but put a virtual twist on it? And so this really is a tip, right? Just to be thinking about while you're videoing, is it okay to call out a student's name? Hey, I really loved how John he made the best mistake this week. He forgot to flip the signs when he solved that last equation. I want to take a look at that again, and I want to say thank you. This is an official shout out to John for making the best mistake this week. Well, if John didn't watch your video, someone in his class did, and they're going to message him and they're going to congratulate him on having made the finest mistake of the week. That sounds pretty cool to me. So if they won't talk to each other in person because they feel weird, because they have face covering on and everyone's spraying everything down and they're not allowed to touch anything, and they feel weird about that, this is just a virtual way, a safe way to make sure that we're recognizing those students who generally don't feel recognized. They don't feel seen. And when our students feel seen and heard, the likelihood that they will participate with us, that they will engage with us, is quite high. So meet and greet your students on video. That's really cool. Yes, we can use their first names in video. I mean, nothing's going to happen. I would definitely limit it probably to just for security reasons, in case you do pop it in a Google Classroom and somebody's parent overhears, because at this point we do have students potentially who are watching this content at home. I would be careful about that, but I certainly would say, hey, Sarah did a great job this week. And here's what she did that I really, really liked. I'm going to read you the first sentence, her hook in her 5-paragraph essay she submitted. All right, I need everyone to lean into the screen and listen while I read that hook. You can totally do that. Sarah just feels seen, validated, and empowered. Easy, but a consideration nonetheless as we're making video content. All right, so how can we raise student engagement, aka commitment, for our students by using educational video? All right, so here we go. All right, number 10. Dr. Costa talks a lot about immediacy cues. Now, that's just a fancy educational jargon term for all the things that you do that you don't even think about in the classroom. Things like, when I get to a really important part of my lesson, my voice lowers, because I really want them to listen and I want them to look at me because it's really important what I'm about to say. Maybe I walk up and down the rows and I get close to a student that I know gets distracted, but I really need them to tune in right now because I'm about to give a really important vocabulary lesson that they have got to tune into. Maybe I slow my cadence down in my speech. That's an immediacy cue. Maybe I stop and I look each of my students in the eyes. Immediacy cue. Now, Dr. Costa in her book talks about that we do those things, especially seasoned educators, do those kinds of things all the time and we don't think about it. We don't think about it. And our students really don't think about it either. But what we need to be, what we need to really consider when we're making videos is how can we use those same kinds of immediacy cues? How can we use those cues in our video to help our students who maybe got distracted because it's not so quiet in their house? And they got distracted while they were trying to watch the video. They really were trying to watch your video, but they got distracted. So how can we bring them back in? So be thinking about how you can incorporate some of these immediacy cues. Totally okay to tell your students, I need you to pause the video here and try this next one on your own. Totally okay to do that. Pauses, asking for a pause on a video is actually a really effective virtual immediacy cue. Quick story, one of the math teachers that I served, she came to me the other day and she was all animated and she said, Sarah, I think I messed up. And I'm thinking, I mean, in this day and age, what did you do? Did you lick the desk? Did you, I mean, it could be anything. You know, I don't know what she did. And so I said, well, oh, no, you probably didn't. So what is it that you think you messed up on? And she said, well, I did my first video last night. And Sarah, I wasn't looking at how long it was. And all of a sudden I looked up and it was 27 minutes long. She said, the students aren't going to watch that. And I said, well, first of all, you don't know what they're going to watch because we have never asked them to do this before. So, you know, just hold your horses, okay? So they'd rather watch you, by the way, for 27 minutes because they don't know what you're going to do versus watching Bill Nye for 27 minutes because they pretty much know what he's going to do and they know him. And so she laughed and I said, so can you walk me through maybe what was in there for the 27 minutes? Because 27 minutes is kind of heavy video. And she said, well, what I did was I went through and I screen shared. I made a Loom. All right. And if you haven't tried Loom, I highly encourage you to check it out. Loom, Loom. All right. There's no time limit on there. And it actually is a really cool platform to record your videos and your head or your face appears in a tiny little circle in the corner or not at all. And allows you to share your slides or whatever it is that you're working on your computer. All right, so anyway, so she said I made my video and I screen shared my my like PowerPoint slides or my Google slides, and I basically walked them through what I wanted them to do. I taught the lesson, I did the launch, and then I asked them to practice on their own, but then I narrated that practice and I asked them to pause at certain places to go try on their own. And I said, okay, so that, and I said, well, that I could see, I mean, I hope that you could see too, how that could take 27 minutes. She was teaching a really elaborate math lesson already. It was super complicated. She wanted to work a few examples and then let the students work 2 or 3 examples on their own. She knew that some of the examples were outliers, and so she wanted to be sure that they understood what they were doing. And I said, I want you to launch this video, and I know it feels really long, and 27 minutes may be a little lengthy, for future work, like for your own sanity also. But I want you just to launch this and I want you to see what happens. When her students came in subsequent days, they all first of all mastered the content that she had asked them to do at home, which some teachers are really struggling with at this point already in the school year. And the students all commented on the fact that it felt like she was with them. That's what they just kept saying. Well, I felt like you were like with me when we were working on our work. How great. Goal achieved. Will she put out a 27-minute video for every single e-learning? Probably not. That's probably excessive. But for the really complicated content and for a student who may or may not feel like they could master it, like they are powerful enough, might be an issue. Might be something we want to consider. All right, so immediacy cues and how we use them. You know, the faculty that I serve, they always joke that when I get really serious about something and I'm in a Zoom meeting and I really want their attention, I get really close to the camera. And that's just what I do. I get really close to the camera and I get really quiet because I want them to like be able to see my face. So immediacy cues are anything that you do in the classroom to get people's attention. All right, so remember those and make a note and use them in your videos. All right, so tip number 9 is brevity. And I know I just said a 27-minute video might be okay, good to go. But in general, your videos should be short. Some of our students have the attention span of a gnat. Okay, all right, so let's be honest, they're adolescents. Most of them have the attention span of a gnat. So we have to keep it brief. Brevity is the order of the day, by far. So get on, get off. Talk about your content, use some content vocabulary, issue a challenge to your students, and move on. Don't make it more complicated than it has to be, and don't use more words than we have to use. All right, so Dr. Costa talks about that in her book quite a bit, that some professors at first get on and just kind of ramble. And I could see how that could happen. You get on for your first couple of videos and you just kind of ramble. But brevity is really where it's at. So we want to make sure that we keep it super brief. Now, quick story. So Jeff Jenkins is your incoming president for SCAMLE. And we always joke about how he's the man of many words. This guy can't have a 5 or 10-minute meeting if you gave him $1 million. Like he just cannot do it. He loves to talk, and he loves to work out concepts in like auditorily. He loves to like talk it out with you. He loves to chat. He enjoys that process of filling the air with sound. He just very much enjoys this. And I will tell you that I did warn him that his picture was in my presentation for tonight, and he laughed and said, yeah, yes, I know, I'm the man of many words. He said it, I didn't. I mean, he knows. But it's really interesting because even if you are a Jeff Jenkins, even if you are a man of many words, and you can't ever have, you have trouble, when they say, the best lectures or mini lectures are like, 8, 9, 10 minutes max for adolescents, and you really struggle with that, this is your chance to show everybody. All right, this is your chance to be brief and to get in and out and give the kids something that they need. All right, so number eight, we have Curious George, because he's always very curious. So make sure that you use your curiosity, that you use the power of curiosity to get students to come to your content and stay. Students can very easily come into your Google Classroom or your Schoology or anything, any of your interfaces that you're using at your school, and they can click through all of your content that you took hours to drop in there in about 30 seconds. But if they're curious about having to solve a problem, or they're curious about what crazy prop you're gonna have in that next video, because yesterday's lamp, that was weird and totally misplaced, and they're wondering about that and they're very curious about it, what you'll find is that they will not only come to your content, but they'll stay, because curiosity is the best motivator. So always leave your students with a challenge, ask them a question, give them a problem, whatever it is, make sure you build their curiosity. Number seven, very important to create purpose. Create purpose. So your video shouldn't be a slapstick. It shouldn't be a slapstick or, kind of like it shouldn't be a silly kind of a thing. It should have a purpose. And so when you create purpose around their learning and around your video, I'm coming to you on video today because everybody got number 5 wrong. And I think we need to talk about it, because number 5 was really hard, but it wasn't difficult for the reason you might think. So we have to create purpose in our learning, for our learning, and in our videos in order to really be impactful with our work. All right, so number 6, just a reminder to you, this is, again, we're building student engagement and student commitment. So vision trumps all of your other senses. So as much as you would like to say, I gave them the directions they were in writing, and I gave them the reading selection, and it was only, the short story was like 7 pages long, and I thought the 8th graders would love it. It's really riveting. But remember that vision trumps all of our other senses. So anytime you can add in a multimedia element, a video, a narration, something where the students have to engage with you, and again, even if it's not a real level of engagement, it's okay. Vision trumps all other senses. All right, so keep that in mind as you move forward with your video endeavor. All right, so the last 5, we're gonna fly through those. how can we build collaboration? Remember I told you at the beginning of this presentation, this lady's crazy. When we watch TV, they can't hear me. I don't think she understands how video works. I do. And so I want you to think about how you could use video to build collaboration. Ever thought about offering student feedback in a video? We can use Flipgrid. We can give students feedback, which they're craving, by the way, in video. I really liked the way you did your introduction and your essay, and I'm about to tell you why. Only took about 30 seconds. I put it in a Flipgrid. I shared it with the student. They got to see their feedback. We moved on. Totally okay to give student feedback that's short, concise, brief, to the point, and personal. Personalized for their specific need, personalized for their specific project. If I know you're talking to me, I'm much more likely to watch the video than if you're not talking to me. All right, so consider that. You might want to give student feedback in video form. Can be very, very powerful. And by the way, if you're cringing because you're thinking, oh my gosh, this lady's gonna make me make videos, you don't have to make videos, but here's the thing. The students don't see you in the video like you see yourself, because they already kind of appreciate you, respect you. You're their teacher. So they don't see some of the things that you do when you play the video back. Just remember that. All right, so we're creating collaboration in a collaborative environment. So remember that telling isn't teaching. We have to make sure that we're not talking at the camera, that we're not talking at our students, that we're talking to them. We want to make reference to student work. We want to make reference to something that happened in the classroom. We want to make reference to specific students in a positive way. Telling them something isn't teaching them necessarily. And we have to be really careful if we choose other kinds of video content to give to our students. So if we're picking a video clip from the History Channel to illustrate something about that we're talking about South Carolina history in our class, totally appropriate. But we can't just let that video clip hang out there. We have to contextualize it. Maybe we do a short 30-second, 45-second, 1-minute introductory video. The video you're about to watch is all about the Battle of whatever that helped shape, South Carolina history. Totally okay to do that. Now I have a purpose for watching the video. I'm much more likely to watch the History Channel clip that you've put aside for me as important for my content. And I think that there's a chance that after the video is over, you may have something to say about it, and I want to be able to contribute to that too. We just hit collaboration. All right, so remember, in order to build a collaborative work environment, we're already down to number 3, make sure that you validate student work. Students love to have their stuff on display. Unfortunately, they're not walking in the hallways, at least in Greenville County. I know other counties as well. They're not walking in the hallways but 1 or 2 days a week at this point. And I can't take any work from them because I'm not allowed to touch any papers. And so I don't have anything on the walls right now. So a great way to validate student work is to make constant reference to it in my videos. Make sure we validate student work and call those students by name. In order to create a really collaborative environment, now we're on to number 2, make sure that you give a graphic organizer to any of your longer videos. Make sure you provide a graphic organizer to your students ahead of time. Now, a couple of reasons why this is so important. And this is one thing that Dr. Costa spent a lot of time talking about in her book. So you already know what you want to say because you're the teacher. So you've been to college and you probably know this content very well. You don't need a mind map because you've taught this before. And even if you haven't, you know a little something about science or math or social studies or English. Your students, however, come to this content cold, and they don't necessarily know what that map or web in your brain, they don't know what it looks like. It is not intuitive, and they can't put it together for themselves. Not to mention the fact that they're adolescents, and so they don't have the level of ability to think and mind map and connect that you do as an adult. So a graphic organizer is the perfect bridge, because your graphic organizer is going to lay out the basic web, the basic design of where my thoughts are going in this video, but it's going to help you to organize the information and put it in one place so that you can go back to it later. So we can have, oh, I don't know, learn it, right? We want all these things. We want to learn, we want to teach them something. We want the students to learn something. So graphic organizers are really a powerful tool. And when we pair them with a video, we get double impact, double impact. Graphic organizers, very, very important. Even for our older students, I don't care. They're 8th graders, they don't need it. Yes, they do. They're 6th graders, yes, they need it, absolutely. They have no idea. They are in shock right now because they are 6th graders and they are back at school, and that is scary. All right, so graphic organizers are key. And I don't forget my 7th graders because I love 7th graders, but they need graphic organizers too. All right, so graphic organizers are very, very important. Okay, so drum roll, please. We're down to the top 1. Okay, so the number one tip for your video production future in education is to get students' attention. All right, get their attention, usually by piquing their curiosity, and then keep their attention using all the really great practices that we know work, and adapt them, and use new virtual tools in your toolbox in order to teach them and let them explore the content a little bit on their own under your watchful eye. But always get your students' attention and always make sure they're with you. All right, I have a teacher right now, just quick example. I have a teacher right now, she emailed me today, and she said, Sarah, I'm getting so frustrated already. For the past 2 weeks, obviously, we've only been in school for 2 weeks in Greenville County. And she said, already, when the students come back, I have to reteach all the content that happened that they were supposed to have done at home. I have to reteach it all, and there's just not enough time. So she and I are going to work on tomorrow and in coming days, are going to work on how her content is laid out, how her content is organized. Because I know that this young teacher is able to teach like a pro. She has her own YouTube channel. Y'all, you should see her house. It is like, it looks like a page out of a magazine. She's brilliant, but we're not keeping and maintaining student attention. So she and I are going to work on that in the coming days. So the number one tip there is get your students' attention and keep it. So final thoughts about all this. This was a flurry of tips and information. I hope it was helpful to you. You know, it's interesting. You know, it's funny how life can be kind of ironic. So when I went to college for my bachelor's and master's degree at Stetson University in DeLand, Florida, which is about 15, 20 minutes outside of Daytona Beach. And to make a little extra money on the side, not much money, you know, college students can't make all that much money. I couldn't do much. You know, I was also an education major, or an English major and an education major, so I knew I wasn't going to make a ton of money. But I worked for the newspaper as a freelance writer, and so I would write usually under pen names, but I would write, and they would use my stuff for filler in the newspaper if it was a slow news day. And one of my pieces that I wrote early on for the Daytona Beach News Journal, and I tried to go find it and I couldn't find it. I have it somewhere, an actual hard copy. But then it frightened me to think how old the piece of paper is now. That's very frightening. But I wrote an article about how teachers will never be replaced by computers because we can't afford to write ourselves out of the narrative. That's what the whole article was about. I was soon to be a new teacher. I was, you know, nearing the end of my college degree. I was super excited, but I was really worried, and this was more than 20 years ago. I was really worried that somehow at some point, someone was going to take, you know, the computers were going to take over and they were going to kick me to the curb. Videos don't do that. The computers don't do that. Don't write yourself out of the narrative. Educational videos allow us to put ourselves back into it. Remember that the kids, all they want is more of you. They don't want more computer time. They don't want more time on Mathia. They don't want more time with Bill Nye. They want more time with you. So please remember that as you move forward and talk about and work on creating your educational videos and educational content for your hybrid learning environment. All right, so check this out. please make a note of this. I have 656 on my phone right now, pretty good. This address, this bit.ly address, take a look at that, Flash PD, September 3rd. Make sure you capitalize the proper letters, make a note of this address. If you go to this address and you fill out the form, I will send you a digital certificate of attendance at this event so that you can submit it to your district and get your points. And there's only a couple of questions on it. It's no big deal. It asks you, I think, to give me some feedback. And then it asks you for a good email address so I can send you your certificate. So easy peasy lemon squeezy, no big thing. I also want to, I'm going to leave this up for just a second, and then I'll switch back and I will take some questions here for a couple of minutes if anybody has any. And then I just want to give you a quick preview, and I will go ahead and put this address. I will go ahead and put this address into the chat as well. So if right now you're running around trying to find a pen, it's okay. I will put this address in the chat. All right, I'll do that in just a second. All right. I want to give you a quick preview. We are going to have another Flash event next Thursday. So I hope your dance card's not too busy because you're going to really want to go to this one. All right, so we've got Brandon with us, and he's bringing a friend too, from what I understand, another colleague of his. But he is going to be presenting about cool, quick, and innovative edutech tools that you can use in all content areas, grade bands, face-to-face, and online instruction. So he's coming to us next Thursday, also sponsored by SCAMLE. And he will do 1 hour with you after dinner so you can get schooled on some of the latest, greatest stuff. And he's going to join us from Cherokee County is where he joins us from. So that information will be in your email soon. Make sure you sign up for that and make sure you join us next Thursday. I do want to give proper credit for the presentation template that you saw tonight. That's from slidesmania.com. It's perfectly free. If you've never checked it out before, make a note of that, slidesmania.com. All of the formats are awesome, and that is where most people are pulling a lot of their really cool formats on Google Slides, or you can download the Google Slide version or the PowerPoint version. And that's where a lot of people are getting their really cool templates and they're not telling anybody else. So do that, slidesmania.com. All right, so I'm giving proper credit. I'm gonna go ahead and jump back into let's see here. All righty. If anybody has, I'm gonna go ahead and dump that in the chat. I'm going to put the link in the chat, and then you are free, if you would like to, if you have a question, to go ahead and you can either drop it in the chat if you have a question, or if you want to make a comment or ask a question, you are welcome to unmute yourself and go ahead and do that now. I hope it was informative. I just got to thank you, and thank you, Donna, for coming. I know I know everyone's teacher tired. I hear you. Absolutely. I hope it was very informative, and I hope you enjoyed live from my sewing room / office. Awesome. Awesome. And remember, I'm getting a whole bunch of thank yous. The form, it says does not open. Really? The form doesn't open? Why doesn't the form open? Hold on. I thought the form opened. It should open. It opened on mine. Okay. All right. Hold on. If the form doesn't open, let me go. I will. Okay. So if the form does not open for you, mine says I need permission. Of course it does. Okay. All right. So do this for me. Make a note of that bit.ly, and I will go back and fix it at the minute we get off this. The minute we get off this, and I promise it'll work. I can fix it. I will fix it. Promise. The minute we get off here. All right, so again, I want to thank you and thank SCAMLE for their support, and I encourage you to sign up for next week's Flash PD. We've got a lot of good stuff coming up this month. We've got one PD scheduled for later in the month to talk about inquiry and how inquiry is not dead, even though we're stuck in this potentially virtual learning environment or partially learning environment or hybrid, whatever the word, asynchronous. But inquiry doesn't have to, we don't have to throw that baby out with the bathwater. So you want to make sure you tune in to our Flash PDs that are coming up.